Okay, okay, so this is a continuation of the previous video, questions for moderate feminists. I'm just adding a little bit to it because there are some, there is at least one other important question I'd like to add to that. So just to recap, in the previous video I had asked um, about equal criminal responsibility. If a woman commits a crime, should she face the same consequences as a man? And should feminism as a movement publicly advocate that, which is something it has utterly failed to do? Should people be forced to conform to call themselves feminists to prove that they're egalitarian? And should feminism strive for gender neutral positions, forums, ministries, and so on? If it truly is egalitarian, should it strive for gender neutral positions rather than sort of women's or men's uh, positions on certain things, i.e., ministry for women, that sort of thing? Now, my next question actually is a bit of a blanket question, but I think it's a very important one, and that is, should feminism be above criticism? I'll ask that again. Should feminism be above criticism? Now, the reason I'm asking this question is because of that sort of reductionist attitude that I have seen from some people describing themselves as feminists. That is, anybody who questions it, especially if they've made the position that they're not a feminist, um, is immediately denounced as a misogynist. I think it's important to know what we mean by misogyny. The word literally means hatred of women and girls. Hatred of women and girls. Um, to me, that's a bit like saying if you're critical of socialism, then you hate the working class and you're opposed to workers' rights. Or if you're critical of capitalism, you're a sort of namby-pamby liberal or a tree-hugging hippie or a fiery communist. Um, in my opinion, no ideology or no movement, rather, because I do think it is important to differentiate between the original ideology, which was egalitarianism, and the movement. It's not the same thing at all, because the way a movement can evolve, and I mean, to give an example, what happened in China in the 1960s would probably have Karl Marx turning in his grave. So the way a movement develops is not the same as the original ideology. And I think it is important to differentiate that point. But here's the thing, should feminism as a movement be above criticism? That's an important question I would like to ask feminists. Should it be above criticism? Should it be protected in a bubble? Um, and this isn't even I'm not even asking this in the context of free expression, because if you believe in Voltaire's famous saying, I disapprove of what you're saying, but I'll defend the deaf your right to say it, then then you'll agree that in free expression. It isn't even about that. It is about the idea that if you uh, is it your position that only by calling yourself a feminist can someone be an egalitarian? I mean, it seems somewhat inconsistent and hypocritical for me that people who call themselves feminists would be critical within the movement, criticize other feminists for maybe a difference of opinion and how something should be done, but then turn around and say that someone who's not a feminist must be a misogynist pig, or if they're a woman, a traitor to womankind. So my open question is, why should it be above criticism? Why should any movement be above criticism? Movements are run by people. People are flawed. So why should it be above criticism? And I'll leave it there. That's kind of I think it's probably the most important question I want to ask, because it does seem to me that in recent years, especially, there is a deep, deep intolerance within the feminist movement to demonize anyone who doesn't agree as a misogynist. That's the automatic reaction. Now, of course, there are misogynists who don't like feminism. That's true. But the point I would make is not everyone who is critical of feminism is a misogynist. And it is just lazy thinking to suggest that they are. There's egalitarians like myself who are staunchly believe in equal rights for women, equal opportunities, who hate violence against women, this sort of thing, but are very critical of the way modern feminism is. I mean, the idea that accusing, for example, women who have issue with feminism of being misogynistic is a bit like saying male feminists are self-hating men. There are some men who would allege that. I don't allege that. I don't believe that male feminists are self-hating men. At least most aren't. Some are. I have seen some who really are because I've seen it. I came across a guy recently who called himself a feminist and said, "Oh, I wish I'd been born with a different chromosome. I hate myself." And that was actually his position. But I believe most male feminists are just men who believe in women's rights, and they believe this is a movement that endorses that. It's not a position I agree with, but there you go. Anyway, that's it. That's my sort of concluding question, and it's directly linked to the first video. But should feminism as a movement, not as an ideology, because the original ideology, I don't think anyone would honestly argue with that. But would I mean, the sexists would, but egalitarians would not argue with the principle of women's egalitarianism. That's ridiculous. But feminism as a movement, I believe, definitely can be scrutinized. And I simply want to know if feminists agree that this movement should be open to scrutiny and should be open to discussion and debate. And if not, why not?